rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kelly, please call the roll.
Christine Arnold. Montana Story. Ben Canzero.
Here.
Priscilla Crisella.
Here.
Eric Ty.
Present.
Robert Dyer.
Here.
Robert Hiscock.
Here.
Nazzy Eugene. Roxanne Valancourt.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. For revisions and additions, the only thing is, action item number 5 will be an executive session for the non-renewal, all right? And now we're gonna turn over the first hour to the superintendent for the budget.
Hello. I'm going to start a little different this year. We're going to put the PowerPoint up that Matt's going to run for us. It might be a little challenging, but we'll get through it. But for new board members, I just wanted to go through a little synopsis of the format that we've been running through, and hopefully it works, and I'm open to suggestions. So you received 3 items. You received your budget book, which is a thorough breakdown of everything that's line items, different sections on staff and enrollment, and on overviews, account details, so forth, and et cetera. You also received snapshots of district office, curriculum, technology, and facilities with a working sheet that Tony and I developed last year, and we thought that it was so helpful, we gave it to you to look at. It shows a 2-year history of that line item. It shows the increases or decreases. It shows per pupil expenditures by schools. It shows proposed staffing, tutor reductions, changes, interns, so forth, and et cetera. We were really happy with how it came out, and we used it with administrators through the process, so we felt like this was good. The budget book you'll use through the entire budget calendar process, which is today through April 7th. The snapshots and the overview will be used on March 3rd and 4th. This is what we'll be using for facilities, curriculum, and special ed will add theirs before the 10th. Today, we're going to use the PowerPoint that was uploaded or that I left here for people that are live. Those are the 3 items. So you'll have everything you need till the end of the budget calendar, which is a little different this year. What we generally do is at the end of each presentation on the dates, if there's questions, we take them down. If we can answer them here, we'll. If not, we'll start our next budget hearing I'll introduce with the answers to those questions. Any questions, suggestions for new members or existing members as to what we're doing and how we're moving forward? Sound okay? All right, it's not that complicated. I generally don't read everything. I go through it. This year is going to be a little different because the PowerPoint lacks a lot of information because we didn't have testing. There were different highlights that weren't in there. But I'm going to start. And generally I'm going to start on page 3. What I will say is these have been the board's goals for 5 years. I was hoping to have a retreat last year, but this year I'm hopeful in May that we'll have a board retreat, and then after the board retreat we'll have 2 days of the administrator retreat. I think it's a good year for us to look at our goals as a board and look at revising them. The wants of the community have changed. The needs of kids have changed. Our demographics have changed. I think it's time for us as a board to re-look at what our core values and beliefs are and what our goals are going to be. Page 4, we were moving along great. We had started a 5-year strategic plan with the board, with administrators, with instructional leaders in the region. In the last 18 months, we've been stagnant. So hopefully we have a retreat this year with the Board of Ed, and then administrators will follow it up with a retreat where your beliefs as a board will align to what our strategic plans are and what happens in the school, and hopefully we'll be able to address that as well. As a regent though, and as a superintendent, we still believe that we want Region 16 to rank us among the 5 best school districts in our DIRD and top 10 in the state. And there are things we use for that. We use data from in-school data, some of our universal assessments. We look at student performance on district and state assessments. We look at how our kids are performing on Smarter Balance, SAT, AP, and then meeting the targets for every indicator in the state accountability report. Now, Michelle just talked about a curriculum committee. Unfortunately, we're gonna be missing longitudinal data. We started with a new universal screener in our region assessments, K-8, which was iReady, and then we had Smarter Balance, which was aligned, and then we were using state SATs, but we haven't taken them now in the last 18 months, so we're missing a year, and if we don't take it this year, we're gonna have 2 years without longitudinal data. So that's a concern. We're still taking the AP test, but SATs hasn't been in the accountability index, so we're hopeful that changed. Probably the most important thing to start with is page 6. So if you look at our budget over the last 6 years, we've had a 0.5% increase. We've had a year where we've had a reduction of 0.5%, and we've had a year we've had a % increase. I think we've done a great job. This year, and this is the superintendent and the administrator's proposed budget, our initial budget at this point. On March 24th, it becomes the Board of Ed budget. Our proposal this year is an increase of $305,905 for 0.75% increase, less than 1%. That's our request this year. I'll go through some of the highlights of what's in the budget, some of the reductions, some of the reallocations. We have a couple big things, but only a few big things. With COVID and the pandemic happening last March, and I'm sure the community, the staff, and everybody, the board agrees, we've been moving very slowly. We haven't been able to really take a great look at things we brought in last year, like our SEL program. It's been implemented with Fidelity, it's great. However, I was just in a parent advisory council. It's tough at the high school because we have an advisory, we're bringing our social emotional learning program in, but we only have half the population in school 2 days a week. So it's hard for us to evaluate some things. The Bridges program, which is our K-5 elementary program that was brought in last year, that's challenging. We're in school 4 days a week. We've been out for 2 weeks at a time. We've had teachers quarantine. It's really hard for evaluate some of our initiatives. So this isn't going to be a year where we're really pushing forward new initiatives and looking for great growth. We're just hoping that we have steady growth over time with a solid budget that meets the needs of our students. But some of the highlights in the budget next year is, and it piggybacks on the fact that we started the math task force 4 years ago. We brought a new K-5 math program in called Bridges, and we'll be bringing in new math curriculum programs for the high school, middle school. Illustrative math K in 6 to 8, and it used to be Envisions, which is our new program for the high school, which would be Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. So you're going to see a nice fluid continuum of new math programming that really should improve student performance. Hopefully our SEL program, K-12, will be implemented fully last year. We started the ruler program from Yale and trained our staff, and that was 1920, but when we were shut down in March, we weren't able to finish it. So the SEL ruler program came in with some of the mood meters and tools and strategies, but it's not in 100% because we didn't have enough time to implement it. There's actually a question from a parent tonight, but I do have an answer for them. We're going to continue with our support for small class sizes. We hired 3 teachers last year to make our classes smaller because of COVID. They were really 1-year contracts. We're going to keep one of those positions because we want to keep our 5th grades at PES at smaller class sizes number. We saw them growing, it was within the board recommendations, but we decided because we're going to probably be looking at more reading remediation next year, we're going to keep one of those positions to keep the class sizes small. So I think that's something we're still doing in this region. The other thing is we have a big dream and hope that we can really upgrade our technology. And you'll see this when Matthew presents on March 3rd. But we have a 3-year plan for new interactive flat panels in all our classrooms and some real infrastructure improvements. We're looking at over $1 million, really close to $1.2 million in the next 2 years investment in upgrading devices and technology. when Matt presents on the 3rd, he's gonna be able to show you, I'm gonna say we reduced our tech budget by at least $500,000, Matthew, in the last 5 or 6 years,
Yeah, I think
and we've
that's fair.
still done upgraded, maybe more. So I think it's a good time. It's part of our leasing plan. There's a little bit of added that may come in, and some of the COVID money may help us. But our goal is to see close to 1.2 million in the next 2 years in technology. And then finally, is we have an ongoing maintenance and renovation project at all of our schools or school facilities. We have a 5-year capital improvement plan and a 4-month outlook at the end of our maintenance plan. And I have to compliment Mark, he's done a terrific job, he's really gotten to know the schools. He's gonna be sending to facilities kind of a snapshot of what the facilities plans look like. We reviewed it in a Monday meeting, I think it'd be a good thing to send out to facilities. And we have an aggressive capital improvement plan. Not necessarily for next year, but 2 years down the road, we're really gonna be looking at $1 million or better, maybe bond a project to replace the track and do some work at the high school gym. It's almost 20, it's gonna be 20 years next year with Woodland. If you think about the traffic on a school for 20 years, the basic maintenance we've been taking care of, but there are gonna be some big capital improvement items down the road. So that's kind of a synopsis of what's in the budget. If you go to page 8, we've had 57 students participate in our experiential learning program, interning. Now, this number, I think, would have been close to 60 or 100 kids, but with COVID, we've reduced that, so that has kind of been slowing down and pulling back. I don't even think we're at that full number at this point. But we do have 18 students taking online courses for credit recovery, in addition to their course load. Edmomentum's been a big help for us, and we think that virtual platform's been helping. And we have 23 athletic programs and offer 38 different clubs at Woodland next year. So I can honestly say we really have a comprehensive program for students, not only academically, but social, emotionally, and behaviorally. As we look at the next slide, this is more of an enrollment trend, and this is something that, personally, I'd like to see our enrollment grow. We have some real good schools that can handle more students, and I think a slightly larger population will increase the amount of programs we can offer. And it also increases different interests for different students. It brings excitement into the school, and I think it's a good thing. But as you can see, there's been a steady decline. Right now, we're at 1987. If you look next year, we're projecting somewhere around 1950. It's gonna be the first time in a long time that we're gonna have a 2-year trend of less than 2,000 students in this region. Something I do want to state, and I'm sure I'm going to reiterate it a number of times, this is my completion of my 6th year as a superintendent. It's close to my 23rd year as an administrator, maybe 25, 8, somewhere in the 20 plus as an administrator. I do not take reductions lightly, nor do I suggest reductions in order to streamline processes or to save money. I don't think we're doing that. I think as a result of the reallocation of funds to meet the needs of our students differently and being fiscally responsible, I think these are reductions that we're recommending because I think it's something that won't affect the school climate, it won't affect the programs we provide, and I don't think it's going to affect any academic, social, or emotional development of our students. So the reductions are as follows. We're looking at reducing an assistant principal at Long River Middle School. Our enrollment's only going to be around 465 students next year, and in the next 2 years down the road, it's going to be even less. The high school will maintain its enrollment because this is the last large 8th grade class that's going into the high school. They're well over 600. So we just talked about, what was it, 680 for next year we're proposing? Somewhere in that area. We're
654.
654. We're proposing a cut with 1 teacher at PES, and as I said, we had hired extra teachers last year for COVID to keep our classes smaller, but we're only requesting 1 reduction. We're reducing 1 instructional aide, 1 guidance counselor. We have 9 guidance counselors in the region. And I think the reduction, our pupil personnel staff is at a solid number. We're going to be able to provide the mental health issues of students coming out of the pandemic. I don't think it'll affect our students either. I mean, when we talk about the mental health of our kids, we look at the program of the whole district, we look at our extracurricular activities, we look at social and emotional learning programs we bring in. So in order to support the needs of kids, it doesn't come from one position, one personnel classification, it comes from the entire Region 16 core values and beliefs that we have in place. We're gonna reduce one history teacher. That right now is an actual vacant position. We're reducing one Spanish teacher. We hired 3 Spanish teachers last year because we had to keep kids in cohorts. So we only offered Spanish. If we pulled them out, we'd be, we won't keep the cohorts with fidelity. So that's a cut from a hire last year. We have one Laurel Ledge retirement we did last week. I think it was Kevin, who was very appreciative when we spoke to him. We have one Woodland Regional High School teacher retirement. And we're reducing one certified sub at one of our elementaries to a bachelor level sub, and it's for substitutes, it's not a teacher. When you look at that, our reductions are $763,000. I think that might be off just a little bit. No, that's pretty close, maybe 1,000 or 2, somewhere along the way. Those are our staff reductions. The next sheet is our projected enrollments, which I spoke to quickly. We're going from 987 to 952, and what's surprising is that it's going to be 2 years in a row we'll be below 2,000. Page 12 is a 10-year history with some information. Total enrollment, special ed enrollment. I think we've done an excellent job meeting the needs of all our kids. Our prevalence rate is around 12.3, 12.4% for special ed, where the state's about 15 to 17%. And I just think that's because we're providing programming, we have capacity within our department, and we've put a lot of effort into reading and math interventionists. We've put a lot of effort into a new SRBI model. We've changed our universal screening methods. We're doing more group instruction, so we're doing more tier 1 instruction to support our kids in the regular environment. If you look at page 13, this is a good graph for the Board of Education and for town officials. If you look at our DERG, we're in the top third of how our kids are performing. And I want to say we're top 20% in the state. Michelle would have to confirm that, don't hold me to that. But if you look at what we're spending, we're only spending $16,791, where the state average is $19,295. So we're actually spending less per pupil than the state average. Is that correct, Tom? So we're 128 out of 166, but we're performing higher. I'm going to kind of skip through the growth achievements because, as I said, we didn't do testing last year. I don't think it would be valid this year to put it forward due to the pandemic and COVID. What I'd like you to do is go to the advanced placement exams page. It's a graph. It's not numbered on mine. I hope it might be numbered on yours. I think this is something Woodland's proud of, and I think we should recognize that, and I'm proud of it as well. 70% of our students are performing 3, 4, or 5 higher in AP exams, which means kids know the rigor they're going to see in college, and a lot of our kids are able to save money by getting credit in college. That's something we've always been proud of. And we buddied that up with the next page, which is our early college experience courses, where we also have kids who are taking UConn courses and North Valley College courses. We have 4 of those. They've earned 408 credits last year. In-state tuition cost $129,000. The cost for the Woodland students was $20,000. I think those are good numbers. And I'm going to put a plug in here. And I spoke to Dana Mulligan about scheduling recently. She has 2 kids at the high school, and I hope Dana doesn't get upset with this. One of the big pushes, the state 2 years ago, Michelle would have to correct me, I think it was 2 years ago, they changed the high school graduation requirements. So you're required to take 1 fine arts course now. which can be art, music, sculpture, photography, so forth, etc. We offer an ECE Music Appreciation course, which is a great course. If you take that course, you fulfill your fine arts requirement, and you're probably gonna get a college credit. And we don't have enough kids signing up for that. That's mind-boggling. I have 2 kids now, they're already through college. But if they were here at Woodland, I'm telling you, that would be the course they take, because it not only meets the high school graduation requirements, you're capable of saving $5,000 by getting a UConn course right here at Woodland. So I threw a little plug in there for that class and for our music program. I think the next most significant and important slide are the last 2 pages, which is page 26 and 27. Tony, do you mind talking to these 2?
Not at all.
You have them in front of you?
I do.
Go ahead, Tony.
Our budget proposal for next year comes in at $41,037,307. When we net out the special education excess cost grants that we anticipate, as well as the adult education grants, then our estimated interest income and use of school fees, we come up with net expenses of $40,484,579. And those would be the expenses that would be passed on to the member towns. If we flip over to the final page, it splits up our projected enrollment for next year, where Beacon Falls is looking at 35% of our average daily membership, and Prospect is looking at 65% of our average daily membership. Now, of course, when there's an enrollment change, unfortunately, that shifts the proportion of the net expenses to each town. Looking at the bottom of the page, what that means for Beacon Falls with the proposed ECS grant for next year is a decrease of $603,947 in assessment. Unfortunately for Prospect, that does mean an increase of $888,389. One thing I do want to point out is the governor's proposed budget came out in the last few days, and it does keep ECS funding flat over the next 2 years. So that's fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23.
Thank you, Tony. One thing I want to say is these 2 pages are a draft. And that's very important for the towns and for the board members here. Because these numbers can change. Okay, enrollment can shift, as well as ECF numbers can shift. We've seen midstream where the state of Connecticut has reduced our ECS money, or they've cut it before the year started, or cut it in January. So these are draft numbers, so when the towns are planning their budgets, they need to recognize that. The other thing I would say, October 1, isn't it the October?
The October 1 of this year. so-
Correct.
Percentages to the town are locked in.
Are locked in,
Correct, correct.
The other figures can't change.
Correct. The other thing is 7 years ago, Prospect was less than 61%. They're now 4% higher with enrollment. What I will say too for Beacon Falls is, in the last 3 years, your education cost is down over $1.2 million in the last 3 years. Last year, I think it was 500,000. 3 years ago, it was like 300,000. So the expenses have been reducing, but because enrollment has been shifting and ECS has been changing, even though we stayed flat or reductions, Prospect's expenses have gone up. That's where we are with the budget. I think it's a decent summary of where we are. You're going to get more in-depth information as each committee presents or talks. If there's questions on anything right now, I'm opening it up to the members. I'm assuming we've gone through the budget and gone through a lot of the work. And if we can answer it now, we'll answer it now. If we can't, we'll answer it at our next meeting. So comments, input, questions?
I have some.
Go ahead.
I don't want to jump the line now.
You're up.
So, forgive me, I gotta go back. I was taking notes the whole time, so.
That's okay. Take your time, Robert.
Do we know where, we talked about the reductions in staff, do we know specifically what grade levels those will be?
They're identified in there. So if you go to the section on reductions, teacher, the grade level.
Yeah.
We do.
'Cause
I forgot PES, so I'd have to go back to that one, because we added one to grade 5. Rima, are you on? Rima?
I am on.
I know we talked a lot about it, and I apologize. Is it 3rd grade?
No, it's our current grade 1 entering grade 2, because those class sizes are about 14 or 15. So the reduction would be from 5, 7 grades to 4.
What grade is the reduction in?
Second grade.
Second grade, Rima?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so it's second grade.
So, Michael, can you just
Yeah.
clarify?
And if you go to history, that's the high school, Spanish is along River Robert, they're all identified with that exception.
Yeah, I'm with you there, that was my
And
other
then-
question.
And then Laurel Ledge though, Regina, what grade is the reduction in Laurel Ledge at? Is that first? Is Regina on?
Yes, I'm here. I have, movement in a few grades.
Okay,
So do you want to know where I'm reducing across the board?
yeah.
So I am.
Well, hold on, let me say something. The reason why it's only one is because there's a retirement, so it becomes a bump down.
I got you.
Go ahead, Regina, sorry, Robert.
Okay.
So I have a reduction of one section in grade 1, a reduction of one section in grade 3, and a reduction of one section in grade 5. But
Robert,
I just say, keep in mind that I also had increases in other grade levels, so it just balances it out to a net reduction of -2.
thank you. Robert, yeah, I should have said this in the beginning. If you go to your local region section in your binder,
Yep.
thank you, Regina and Rima, and you go to Laurel Ledge, it's the first one. I should have said this before, I apologize. So it says kindergarten, number of teachers presently is 3.
Nope. It's the staff enrollment section.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, staff enrollment. You see it?
Yep.
So if you look at what's shaded, it tells you what the numbers are with the same teachers, one less, so forth, and et cetera.
Yep.
And it'll give you the class sizes as well.
Yep.
I should have said that to you before.
No, I saw that.
And we do that for the elementary schools because, you know, the middle school and high school is different. You can't give you 8 Algebra 1 classes or 9 geometries. That's a little different for how you do class sizes.
Can you speak to, you said earlier that we hired an additional teacher during COVID to keep class sizes down.
We hired it prior to COVID. The reopening committee hired 2 teachers for Prospect to reduce class sizes.
So when we're talking about reducing staff in these same buildings, are we talking about reducing the position that was just hired, or are we talking about something other than that?
At PES, it's the positions that were just hired.
Yep.
At Laurel Ledge, it's a reduction. They're down to 267 students next year.
Okay, and,
So their class sizes are smaller than what they've been in the past. And if you look at it, they have 35 students in first grade, 51 students. This year, we're looking at 35 the following year.
And do we think, I guess where I'm going with this is, we're talking about the kids coming back in, we're talking about, you know, I think there's going to be a need to kind of bridge that gap from COVID to, you know, the normal learning experience. Do we think that reducing staff at this time, although I understand some, it's attrition in some places and other things, you know, retirement or necessity in other places. But do we think that it's wise to, I don't want to say increase class sizes, because I'm looking here, it doesn't look like class sizes would increase, but with the increased demand on the teacher of the individual kid's attention, right? These kids are coming from being at home, individual instruction essentially with their parents and with the teacher, now coming back in, do we think it's wise, you know, to do that at this time? And then subsequent to that, I know the enrollment numbers look like they're overall going down, but I've been looking at the real estate market and Prospect's seeing huge influxes of people. I mean, huge influxes of people. Should we be looking at reducing a teacher only to add one back mid-year, I guess is my question.
Well, I mean, you said a lot in that statement.
I know, I'm sorry.
So which is
A lot of
fine.
notes.
It's a good statement. I mean, I don't necessarily agree that they're getting individualized attention at home. I'm not saying parents aren't doing a great job. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, it's hard for some parents who are working and grandparents are watching them, or if they're daycare. So I don't know about that individualized attention. Do I think it's gonna be a difficult year opening next year? I think it's gonna be an adjustment for kids that haven't had the structure of being in school for 6+ hours a day. Reading is 120 minutes, lunch is 22. I think there's gonna be an adjustment. I think there's gonna be social and emotional needs as a result of kids who haven't developed socializing in the younger grades. I don't think there's gonna be a huge adjustment academically in the older grades, but I think there'll be some emotional issues for kids who might have been at risk before and didn't socialize. So I think those needs are there. I think when you talk about staffing, as a board, you have to ask yourself, is it the classroom teacher piece you're concerned about? And if it is, are you changing what you think class sizes should be down the road permanently? Or are you saying, hey, let's hire more reading and math interventionists, because that's where you're gonna get the help. So there's a lot in that statement. I don't see any area with class sizes anywhere in the region, except, and remember, you could speak openly about this, except PES, where we were taking 2 teachers away up until 2 weeks ago. And we only took 1 because we wanted to keep the 5th grade, now I'm getting myself confused, I think it's the 5th grade smaller. So, you know, we met individually, and then we met as a group. I think it's the right proposal. We're only cutting 2 classroom teachers at the elementary level at this point. Actually 3. I don't think you should hire staffing or keep staffing because you think you may need it. I think you could always hire the week before. We did that with kindergarten a few years back. I mean, I think this is the appropriate staffing recommendations at this time.
That's what I would say. I agree with what Rob was saying, kids coming back and readapting and all that other stuff, and it's gonna be different when things come back. It's not gonna be the normal schools that we had before. So from my perspective, I look at the staffing numbers Michael was referring to in the class sizes. And I go back to just what he said also. This is February, March, April, May, before we finalize a budget. And I agree, people, you put a house on the market in Prospect, and it's going overnight for more than you're asking. And I've seen things on social media where people are asking now, hey, is anybody in Prospect planning on selling their house?
I've seen that too.
All right, let's cut the real estate agent out, he's not ready to buy. And we don't know how many kids are coming in either, but we still have 3 months to plan, and we can add right up until until we go to regional meetings, we can add a teacher back.
And if you look at class sizes here,
They're excellent.
Oh, yeah, no, I
they're all
don't.
below
Very good.
20.
Yeah, I
So
don't
if you
think
talk
so.
about staffing, maybe it's another math interventionist. Maybe it's another, I mean, they're talking about reading coaches today, which I have not put forth.
I just wanted to put it out.
No, I think it's a great
consideration.
conversation.
I-
There's 13 questions for the agenda tonight. They're all on the cut of the guidance council.
Yep.
So we'll address that.
I just want to put it out there that we're basing what we think are decent class sizes on conventional wisdom and conventional classroom interaction and our understanding of that. I think it's going to be vastly different when these kids come back from a year of being, I said, 1-to-1, and but it's just the attention of the parent. They're not dividing that attention amongst 20 other kids, 16, 17 other kids. So I think there's gonna be a huge change. I would just caution in using conventional thinking and conventional, numbers to define what a lot of kids in a classroom is when we're coming off of a pandemic where we had a large gap in, I think, growth in the students in that year. So I just wanna put that out there for consideration.
Yeah, listen, this is why we have 5 budget meetings. This is why we discuss. You could discuss the same point, Robert, up until vote, honestly. And I think they're great conversations, good discourse. I foresee the first 3 weeks next year of us just adjusting back and doing different things. I don't know where we're gonna be with student performance. I'll be honest with you. Tony, did you wanna say something?
It is, just one thing I want to keep in mind is we're talking about the general operating budget right now. We've seen throughout this year funds being made available through ESSER 2, the American Recovery Act is coming shortly. That's not to say that if we get to September and we realize we need those additional supports from other teachers, that we can't turn to those funds to fund another teacher. I think we have to be fiscally responsible with taxpayers' money to balance out what are we doing with their money versus the money that's being made available to us federally to offset things like that.
And we don't take cuts lightly. As I said, this is the first time in 7 years I proposed any cuts. In all my years as an administrator, even in other districts, we don't just cut.
To Michael's point, I think that the class sizes are really excellent for us and, with our guidelines. But we do use interventionists, especially in math and reading. And I think if anything, that is where we might have to add. But the class sizes are excellent right now.
Uh,
Does any board members want to comment, or any administrators are welcome to speak, as long as you guys don't mind.
I have a couple of things. Where is the guidance counselor position? Because I'm a little concerned about that too. What grade?
Well, right now, for us, we have to cut according to the union, so we cut the last hire, which right now is at PES. However, we have 2 guidance counselors at PES, we have 2 guidance counselors at Long River, we have 5 at the high school, we have 9 guidance counselors in the region. We have 4 school psychologists, and we have 4 social workers. So we have 17 people in pupil personnel, not including our nurses, which fall under pupil personnel, or our speech and language pathologists. So we can reallocate if we need it. I mean, it's really unusual for elementary schools to have the amount of staffing we have in pupil personnel, even the high school. If you look at the NEASC recommendations, we're well above the recommended numbers for our population.
Okay, and you have a full-time social worker at PEM?
Yes, we have a full-time social worker, a full-time school psychologist, and 2 guidance counselors. But that doesn't mean that's where we're gonna pull the person. We may reallocate later, or it might be the spot, Christine. We'll talk about that as an administrative team when we know what the needs of our kids are when they come in, as well as our social emotional learning program that we put in place.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you had gotten that rolled out this year with COVID and everything.
Well, we do have it rolled out, and there was a question about it tonight, and I have an answer. Ruler is rolled out 100%, but we haven't gotten through all the tools that are involved in it. We have the mood meter, we have the lessons. The problem was in March of last year, when everyone went home, we couldn't finish our training for our teachers.
Oh, okay, you didn't do, okay.
So we couldn't finish all of it.
At least they rolled out some of it. My other concern is the position, the assistant principal at the middle school.
Yep.
I know the numbers are going down, but that's a lot on your principal, I think, because you know how the middle school can be. It's,
Less
very busy there.
I think the issue at the middle school is this. Our numbers are shrinking, are really shrinking. I mean, there's less than 500 kids right now. I think there's only 488 right now. We're getting down to 467. A lot of school districts, or needs of a school, are based on the amount of students. It's a little different at the high school when you're doing transcripts, or you're doing college applications, you're doing resumes, we're doing capstone projects, you're doing student portfolios. At the middle school, though, with those numbers reducing to that degree, our administrative needs have reduced. Most of our special ed populations, with us having 2 district level support personnel for special ed, they're handling a lot of those PPTs. Plus, we have a guidance counselors there, we have social workers there, we have school psychologists there. So I think we're kind of a little top-heavy with the demands of that population, Christine.
What's the thought process in terms of if that position is no longer there? Again, I'm still stuck in COVID mode here, but,
Well, this all may change if we open up with the COVID issues next year too. I'm hoping we don't, I'm hopeful.
I'm thinking that, you know, again, that position is typically, from my experience, is sort of like, dealing with a lot of DINA discipline issues and things of that nature. Which
DINA discipline.
probably that we've seen a reduction in the need for that, during COVID, because, you know, you gotta reduce the.
We don't have any
amount of people
vaping
building,
issues
You
anymore.
don't have any vaping issues anymore. But again, with the kids
That's all we
coming,
did.
with the kids coming back in, are we okay with the fact that we're reducing, again, every one of these reductions, I'm looking at it and saying, every single one of these proposals is hitting at the stuff that we're saying we wanna help. The social emotional needs, we're getting rid of a guidance counselor. The gap in instruction for over the past year and a half, we're getting rid of teachers and not helping out with the class sizes. I know they look okay, but.
But our class sizes at the middle school are fantastic, I gotta tell you that.
Oh, no, I'm referring to the.
Even the elementary schools. Let me say something, and this is gonna be a big topic when we get into the board and questions. Social and emotional needs of kids are not met with one personnel classification. So if you want to work on children, and this is my belief system, and you know, I work for the board and I work for the district. 2 years ago, we went out, put a committee together to look at the social and emotional needs of our kids. Prior to the pandemic, prior to anyone getting sick and schools shutting down. So we were proactive. I had a parent advisory committee today that talked about, we have probably one of the better advisory programs in the state of Connecticut at Woodland, and we have an advisory program in the middle school, where each kid has a teacher that's almost a mentor, a friend, an educator, someone to go to in this region. We brought SEL in, K-12, prior to us thinking after the pandemic our kids' needs. We created career pathways at the high school, because our thinking was if kids aren't engaged, if kids don't enjoy the classes they're gonna take, they're not gonna develop behaviorally as well as we want, they're not gonna develop socially. If kids are unhappy with school because we don't have a STEM program, a robotics program, a CNA program that we have now, then we're not meeting the needs of our kids. I believe that it's a misperception if we think, hey, we're gonna have issues coming back for COVID, so we're gonna hire 2 guidance counselors, and that's gonna resolve the issue. It's your programming, it's the school culture that you provide that's gonna help kids socially and emotionally. It's not one person that's gonna sit one-on-one with the student. Those are real mental health issues that maybe we handle or don't handle. Now, I'm a huge advocate of guidance counselors and social workers. We've increased the ones we've had since I've been here in the region. But I think it's a whole program approach, and I think that's the way we have to look at it. That's my belief. Shelley, you're on. Did you want to say something?
You know, I wanted to just mention and make sure everyone was aware of, like, the national standards and the recommendations is for school counselors within the school district would be average 250 students per one school counselor. So we are less than 2,000, which would make it appropriate to be about 8 school counselors. The recommendation is for school psychologists, every 500 to 750 students, you have one school psychologist, which we are better than that on that, but the school psychologists can do so much more with testing, which is required at the elementary levels and middle school level. And then our social work, the recommendation for social workers is about 400 to 500 students per social worker, and we are exactly at that rate. So I'm just saying that proportionally, when you look at the recommendations from these 3 agencies, National Association of Social Workers, National Association of School Psychologists, and National Association of School Counselors, so that's what their recommendation is for the level of number of students you have per role in those positions.
As well as we trained our entire elementary staff, or started training on social and emotional development, we've embedded it into the school day with the ruler program from the.
And Michael, I want to support you on that, because that's the other piece, is the evidence is showing that social emotional learning comes from the classroom teacher more so than the once a month guidance lesson that we're providing. And when I look at the number of students who are have 504 plans or have IEPs, when I look at how many meetings they're attending or how much support they need to provide for the students, the caseloads are reasonable if we, even with the idea of reducing the one school counselor. I don't like the idea of reducing it either. But when we look at where we are and what's happening within the community as far as reduction in numbers for our students, we have to look at how we're supporting them. And I think that, if I was to say where's more effort needed is in that reading and math area, making sure our academics, because we are training our regular ed teachers to support that special ed, the social emotional learning piece of their day.
And we could all be wrong here, and it could blow up in our face, I don't know. I say that in jest, though.
Yes, and that's the thing, but, we're going based on standards that we have here, and I think, and we are more supported than, honestly, the reduction, it looks like if I put all the numbers together, it looks like we could even reduce in the secondary, but I don't think it makes sense. I don't want to reduce more. I'm concerned about even reducing as we are, but I don't want to. I want to make sure that we're mindful of what are the recommended standards, and where are we with our performance, and what our numbers are within the district.
Thank you, Shelley, that was very helpful. Go ahead, Christine.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think that instruction needs to come out of the classroom with the teachers implementing the tools daily and reinforcing that. I totally agree with that. But I had a question about the middle school again. Are there other middle schools that size that just have a principal? Because I haven't heard of that, but I'm sure there may be, but I'm just curious.
Christine, I don't know the answer to that. What I will tell you is that schools, whether they're K-8s or K-5s with 500 or less, generally only have one administrator. But I don't know the answer to that question. I could do some research, but I do not know the answer.
Yeah, no, I just think it would be helpful. I just think the middle school is a different animal. I don't know. The types of things that happen in that building with the students and the crisis and everything else, I think it's a lot for one administrator.
But don't forget, crisis is handled by our support personnel.
Well, yes, and the principals are still involved with that too. It's not, and it's not just crisis, it's everything that happens in the middle school. So I don't know,
No, it's a great point, Christine, thank you. But we will look into other schools. Anyone else that hasn't spoke, or questions, or concerns, or opinions?
Robert, did you have more questions?
Oh, I just had one for Tony, and I'm sure he'll clear this up for me in 1 second. Tony, how is it, and this could be is this the delta of the new salary? How can you have a retiring teacher represent only a $37,000 reduction?
And that's what it is.
It's
the
the
delta
delta.
between the retired.
We're trying to be really tight here,
I was a little
When I
confused, I'm
first
like,
came
why are we
in,
getting rid of somebody making
yeah.
$37,000?
and that's why it says, retirement, I wrote on mine, accounts for the reduction in force.
Okay.
Is that the one? Yeah. It's hard to be exact with who's moving, who's coming, who you're hiring, what step,
Sure.
what the benefits are, that the health insurance is $18,000 on every new teacher. You hire someone at top step or lose somebody, and I have never, and I think the administrators can say this, I don't tell an administrator you can't hire someone that has 7 years of experience, you gotta hire a new teacher. I never say that. We always try to hire the person that's best for the job, we always do.
So that position will be filled, but it'll be filled at a lower salary level, and this is just the delta between the two salaries.
We're assuming, it may not, this is a best guess effort at who we're hiring.
Okay.
You generally don't hire elementary people that have been working for 30 years in elementary, because they generally won't leave.
You figure on step 3 or 4, you're in the ballpark, you're safe.
Yeah, I think so. I think we do, like 40 40-something thousand dollars and then 18,000. So I think, Tony, I talked to you about like $60,000 when you hire new teachers with the whole package.
That's all I got.
All right. If that's it, we have one question we're gonna come back for, which is Christine, and see what the surrounding towns have for administration. And,
You know, just a follow-up question with that, with Christine's point and the number of kids. What's the average high school the size of ours? How many administrators do they have?
I don't know the answer to that.
Do we need, and I'm not advocating we get rid of anybody, but do we need 3 quasi-vice principals and vice principals at the high school our size?
What I would say is, I think we do, because I think the new teacher evaluation plan that came in, not this year because of COVID, is grueling, number one. Number two, it's afforded us the ability for Dana, Ryan, and Kurt to almost have specialties. So Ryan's very involved in math, being a former math teacher. It was an area where we were having problems, so he works side by side with the department head, with the team on professional learning, on days where they have departmental meetings, on new programs. You know, it's been a huge advantage for us. He also works on social and emotional learning. Dana does a lot with the scheduling. She does a lot with different disciplines, where Kurt, I think, is working with, I can't even tell you off the top of my head. So I think for us, it works. I would not want to change that by any
You know,
means.
I'm not advocating a change, I'm just thinking of, let's be prepared to answer that question if it comes up at a public hearing.
Well, it came up now.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We're on public TV.
We're in public.
Yeah. Well, let's.
So my answer is yes, we need all three of them,
Okay.
without question.
Then I'll support that.
Thank you. All right, Priscilla, you want to move to the regular meeting?
Okay.
Now listen, if any board members before our next meeting have questions that come up or concerns, I could answer them privately, or I could bring them to the board meeting. Do not hesitate. There's no question that's off limits here. I think all questions are good. Last year, we worked on what was called orchestrating conflict. If you talk about everything that comes to mind, it eliminates obstacles that can come later because we've already hashed them out.
Okay, so we'll go to the agenda. Approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2021 regular Board of Ed meeting. A motion? So moved by Robert Hiscox. Second? Second?
Ben?
By Ben. Okay. Any subtractions, corrections, or additions?
Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? All right, carries. Official comments from either town officials? No? Public comments?
Hold on. Town officials, we did not have a comment, but you did get an email today, a question on capital non-reoccurring. It's more of correspondence, but we won't add it next week, so it's in your emails, and Tony did a great job answering it. I think we're getting on the same page with the thinking. Ben, it goes back to your question, and I think our legal opinion cleared it up very clearly that we were accurate in how we put money in, but that is emailed to you guys. Great.
Public comment?
Yes, we have 13 questions tonight. Most of them around guidance. I'm gonna read 1 through 8, and I'm gonna have Michelle read 9 through 13, only because I think it's difficult for me to read and then try to answer. Some I'll answer, some I'll group together. But what we're gonna do is post our answers and send it to the parents that submitted the questions, because I know this is a difficult process. So the first question is from Tracy Hussey, Beacon Falls. What is the district doing to address the growing needs of mental health? I asked my son about ruler lessons, check-ins, using mood meter, etc. He really doesn't say much. Most kids don't when they come home to their parents about school. With all the teachers, related service providers have a plan for between hybrid and safety. We've talked about it tonight, but I will reiterate, Tracy, we're on track for completing year 1 of the rollout of ruler. Teachers have developed their goals around SEL. So at our school, PES for instance, they developed goals this year that go around ruler, so it's part of their practice and the evaluation. They're completing 2 performance tasks from the program with their students. The mood meter tool is used school-wide by all staff, and the charter tool has been implemented. Unfortunately, with us not completing the training last year, we haven't been able to get all the tools in, but we're hoping with refreshers and opportunities, will be fully implemented next year, but we are doing social and emotional learning, and it is happening at the elementary school. What I'm gonna ask my elementary and my middle school principal to do is put a Schoology note out on what we've done with SEL at the school at this point, so that parents have an update on it. That's a great question. It's probably something we should have done earlier. I have seen a lot of what our social workers have posted and guidance counselors. I know Elle Hanover, our social worker at Laurel Ledge last week, posted something on Schoology about here's what we did with social and emotional learning and some of the tools we put in place. So I have seen it on Schoology myself. Question 2 was from Ray Gracie from Prospect. Why is Region 16 eliminating school counselors? If anything, we should have more mental health. It goes on to say, during these challenging times, our children are being more vulnerable to the pandemic. I believe this is recognized by the board. Is the board aware of increase of child depression and suicide? I personally know a young female in Woodland. I'm not going to read that part, I'm sorry. Depression rates have tripled since pre-pandemic times. I have 2 children in Region 16. I've seen an increase in depression and anxiety amongst friends. Parents who are working from home or having to teach younger children not being there for their older kids who are self-sufficient and locked in their bedrooms learning on their own in seclusion. These older kids are already eliminated social transactions, and now they will have less resources. Why are we taking away staffing? That was that question. This next one is from Dr. Jennifer Bunk from Beacon Falls. I also heard Board of Ed is thinking about keeping Woodland at their current hybrid model. Unfortunately, I was actually on a meeting with the Department of Public Health 2 days ago, or yesterday, and great news is teachers are going to start getting vaccinated on March 1st. I don't want to say it's bad news, but there was 1,000 superintendents and community leaders on the conversation. I was able to submit a question, which was, once our staff is vaccinated, are we going to reduce the restrictions on social distancing? Because our high school cannot be less than 3 feet if we bring in more than 18 students in a classroom, which is what we have. We can't fit. Or our core areas, like the gyms, the cafeteria, the hallways, we won't be able to adhere to social distancing. Their response from the Department of Public Health was they're really happy with where Connecticut is going with the COVID rate. However, although we're vaccinating at a rate as high as any other state in the country, we're going to adhere to the social distancing recommendations till the end of the year. So it does not look like, and I'm really upset to say this, it's a little premature, but I think it's a great question. I don't think the high school is going to go back outside the hybrid model because the requirements of the state and the Connecticut Department of the Board of Ed is that we're going to have to adhere to those guidelines. I am hopeful that the elementary school, K-8, somewhere around April break or after, can go back to 5 days a week. But as far as the high school, I don't think that that's going to change. Next question was Andrea Ludd Texeria from Prospect. Why are they planning to cut mental health professionals when there is a budget surplus? I'm going to speak to the counseling later, but what I want to say about surplus is the surplus that was in the budget last year is last year's. We run a zeroed out budget every year, so our budget starts at 0. We can't take any of that money and use it towards staffing down the road. The only thing you can use is 1% of it towards capital non-recurring. But I'll speak to the mental health question later. Stephanie Way of Prospect, why do you plan on cutting staffing, counselors, and teachers when mental health is going to be so high? Lisa Sizer from Beacon Falls, same question. Is it true that current ratios for counselors to students will be higher if cuts are made? And Kelly Messina, who's on our parent advisory council, we spoke to about this earlier. I understand the budget season is a time to talk about where services can be streamlined and costs can be saved next year. throughout this pandemic. The majority of our teachers and school district staff have continued to go above and beyond for our students. The students and staff have continued to adapt in ways that we never could have imagined a year ago. After 11 months, the constant stress of the pandemic is taking its tolls. I hope we're not planning on cutting staffing. I had a question that came in a little later. Allison Cameron of Prospect, I'm carrying the news of cutting within our schools, teachers and support staff. With the budget surplus, why are these cuts needed, especially in times like these where kids need it the most? Where are those funds going? I spoke to that, but what I can say is the surplus, which is around 600,000, is getting voted on. All that we can keep from the surplus is 1%. We've already taken some of it. I think it's another 220,000 that can be decided on, but that will be addressed tonight at the board meeting. I have one more question that Nazi sent to me. For some reason I had trouble uploading it, so I'm going to read it. It is from April Mischler. She's a parent of 2 children. I think it's a Prospect parent. And she says, good evening. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for their extreme efforts during these trying times. Trying, demanding, traumatic, fraught. They all mean the same thing, but somehow fall short on the description of how we are feeling. Our kids from pre-K to high school with average needs and special needs have been rolling with the punches right there along with us. But these kids lack in some areas. They are still holding together daily and waking up the next day looking forward to a new day and the good tomorrow brings. How teachers support school counselors without maintains good mental health and a well-placed support structure, we're opening ourselves up to a bigger pandemic, a mental health crisis. If you take away certified staff at this critical juncture when you have a surplus in your budget, you are condemning those with mental health illnesses and leaving current staff to add to their already trying jobs. I do not support removing any certified staff member this year. Please consider that in your decision and consider it for the future. It's time to tell everyone who is dealing with mental health issues that they are not alone and that getting support isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. This was a quote from Michelle Obama. Thank you for your time. Stay safe and stay well. Thank you, April. Those questions were the first set I have. I'm going to respond to them, probably reiterate some of what I said, and then have Michelle speak to read the 9 to 12 questions. What I would say, these are all great questions, these 9 questions. But we've said this before, and I'm going to reiterate it. We're not in any way trying to streamline services, nor are we trying to reduce the ability to meet the mental health needs of our students or staff, as well as the social-emotional needs in any way. We have projected enrollment of less than 2,000 for 2 years. We're only at our best estimate at 1950. We have 17 pupil personnel members in our school system, 4 social workers, 4 school sites, 9 guidance counselors. I think Shelley spoke to the standards, broke it down a little bit for us. Unfortunately, in the last 7 years, we've had 300 or more less students in our school system. Our class sizes are still very small. Since I've been here for the last 6 years, we've invested in mental health needs and the behavioral development of our students in a number of ways. We've increased the number of social workers we have in this region. We've created a comprehensive social and emotional learning program, K-12. We've created initiatives such as You Matter. We've funded presentations through TUCOM. We've incorporated student efficacy in our instruction so students take ownership of what they're doing academically and behaviorally in the classroom. We've expanded our extracurricular activities. We've increased the number of clubs and groups that kids are interested in. We've put in different sports programs. We've reallocated resources so we can individualize courses and career pathways so the students are engaged. Our philosophy is, in order to support students emotionally and socially and behaviorally, it has to be a comprehensive program and school system that does that. I guess my point is simply nurturing students and supporting the mental health of our children is an effort that's been addressed by the vigor of all our staff members. Our staff has come to us with suggestions of clubs and groups, fundraisers, community efforts, being productive citizens. And that, along with our programming, is what supports students. There's a misperception regarding supporting students. It is not limited to one personnel classification. It's not one social worker, one school psychologist, one third grade teacher, one high school principal. It's everyone in a school system that buys into the mentoring and the development of the whole child. Unfortunately, we are recommending some staffing reductions this year. However, it's not to save money. It is the first time I've had to do this in 6 years. I do not take it lightly, obviously. It's not our first option. It's done to be fiscally responsible, to reallocate funds to better meet the overall academic, social, emotional development, and the overall needs of our entire student population. With that being said, we as an administrative team and leadership have met in this room and have talked about where we should move money. Where is better service our kids? Is it through internship programs? Is it through SEL programs? Is it through reading specialists, tutors? We've had those conversations. What I could assure you is we will continue to evaluate our pupil personnel needs. We reallocate and reassign staffing when we come back in August and September and see what is at the forefront and what is the evident gaps or where we need to put staffing. I'm hopeful we open as normal next year. If we do not, we may be having a very different conversation here at this table. But I hope that kind of presents what the thinking is behind these questions. And I'm sure we'll continue with these conversations. We have a few more questions, 9 through 13, that Michelle's going to answer. And I'm sorry this is the format we're using.
So we have a question from Gina Kent from Prospect. Why will teachers and counselors be cut from the upcoming budget? The pandemic may be coming to an end, but the social and emotional needs of students will continue long after people are vaccinated. Smaller class sizes allow more teacher-student time. Having an extra school counselor will provide them time to push into classrooms to do check-ins, teach SEL curriculum in addition to supporting staff.
Just keep reading. So I think we've
Okay.
addressed it, that's
Okay.
why I gave you set, but I think
Absolutely.
I think the name of every
Person
should be read and the question should be read.
We have a question from Lisa Diaz from Prospect. Why is the plan to cut teachers and counselors if there is a surplus? If anything, I think there should be more help, not less. A question,
Can I just say one thing about, that's the second or third time, and I have to say I agree. We can respond, right, if we choose. So,
You've got to go through the board to respond to a question. Only a board chair can respond, or I can, unless the board chair allows you to respond.
Through the
That's just
chair.
the process.
You can respond.
thank you. It's just a comment. So I've heard a few times now that there seems to be the perception that there's a surplus. And the surplus is in this fiscal year budget, not next fiscal year's budget. And the surplus is a result of not having kids in the building physically, reductions in electricity, all kinds of other things that will not necessarily be there next year.
Transportation, too, especially.
Transportation, athletics, the list goes on and on. So I just want to be clear with, although that I agree with a lot of what's been said here, I just want to be clear that we're not anticipating a surplus for next year's budget. We don't have a surplus and we're deciding to cut teachers. I want to be very, very clear that that's not.
And I think, Robert, we could reiterate what I said. You have to zero your budget out. Any leftover for money for state of Connecticut, we can't keep and use for next year. So there is no surplus that we can take. Now, as Tony said, if things change and there's ESSER funds and different things happen, unfortunately, it's not, and Robert said this before, it's not as clear a year to know where we're gonna be in August.
Thank you.
we have a question from Carmela Avery from Prospect. Is it true there is a proposal to cut counseling services for our students? If so, why would this be a topic of discussion, given all that students have been through with the pandemic and the future fallout that we know that will come in 2021 and 2022, if not longer? Let's focus on resources to help build them up and cope. And our final question is from Vicki Savarese from Prospect. Why is cutting teachers and counselors even being considered, especially given the escalation in general of our children's emotional and educational needs? There has got to be another area we can cut money from that won't directly affect our future leaders of this town and country. We need more teachers, more counselors, and more attention to our kids. Please reconsider this. Our small community deserves small town individualized attention.
Thank you. We will send a email to everyone, if we have it, or mail, the response to those questions. I know we kind of grouped a lot of them together.
Okay, in the correspondence in our packet, there is a letter from Mr. Bunk, and all the board members have it. So the update to the community from the superintendent is also in our packet. And the email from, us concerning the capital non-recurring fund expenditure is also there. Treasurer's report, who's gonna give that?
I'm hoping Bob will read it.
Okay.
Treasurer's report for 2/24/21. The balance of the general fund as of today is $4,945,446.73. Tonight's invoices total $361,038.82. General fund, $359,986.69. Federal and state grants, 0. Adult ed and other grants, athletic fund, $1,052.13. Capital non-reoccurring projects right now, 0. Total invoices include check runs from 210 to 219/21.
Thank you.
You're signing it, Bob?
Is student rep?
Yes, Kylie, I think Kylie's on the line. Are you on, Kylie?
I don't believe I saw her on here.
She sent us a report, a student government report, and she sent me an email she'd be on today.
No, I don't see her connected right now.
Okay, I have her student government report. I will scan it and email it. It's brief, but it's excellent. From the departments, we do have the Fine Arts, Ms. Kristen Lango. Save the date, May 7th, 7 p.m., the Woodland Theater will present the school-wide cabaret for audiences to enjoy. They're gonna stream it on the Woodland Theater YouTube channel. We're also hoping to hold it outside where we have graduation in the courtyard with limited viewing, so we're really hopeful that it happens. I've been working with Kurt, and, I apologize, the name is drawing a blank. I actually spoke to Tina Malinsky about it today. The Inter-Club Council representative, ICC will be having its next meeting on March 4th at 7 p.m. Student Government, Miss Emma Wood, Student Government is planning monthly spirit days for our year-long spirit competition. I'm glad they're doing that. We'll be holding a Red Out fundraiser this Thursday and Friday for leukemia and the Lymphoma Society. I don't know where that Red Out fundraiser is, or if that's in school. That's the report. Kylie, thank you so much for sending it in, and hopefully we'll get her on the line next time to read it.
Thank you. For exemplary people? The only thing I would like to say is I would like to thank the administration, our superintendent, and all the support staff for compiling this budget. Thank you. Now you report.
Yes. I'm gonna jump, and then I have Michelle come on. I wanna add one thing. So I had a few parents that have been emailing me on a regular basis, and there's been some communication about snow days. So we did a survey. We sent it out to the staff and students. We had 1,341 responses. And there were 2 questions: keep all snow days remote, or have a snow day and add days onto the end of the year. 73% want to keep snow days remote. 27% want to add a day on and put it on the end of the year. So I think the way we're going is the way we should continue to the end of the year. That's just an aside. But I did want to put that out there. We uploaded it, and I left it for the members that are here. I want to formally congratulate our 2021 valedictorian salutatorian this year. Kylie Huck will be our class of 2021 valedictorian, and Austin Roberts will be our salutatorian. They've earned this distinction through many years of hard work and dedication. They're great representatives of Woodland. Well done. Mr. Irwin shared that with myself to share with the board, and I'd like to extend my congratulations, and on behalf of the Board of Ed, we'd like to congratulate you for the hard work and your achievements.
Very well done.
Excellent. Michelle, if you'd like to give a,
Sure. Prior to our meeting this evening, the curriculum committee for the Board of Ed met, and one of the items that we discussed is making revision to our talented and gifted programming. And basically, our current program is not meeting the needs of our children in the way that we would like it to. And part of that is involved with looking specifically at how our kids access the talented and gifted services during the school day in grades 6 through 8, where kids have to make a decision in terms of missing a class in order to access the programming. So we've looked at schedules, we've looked at how to retool, and specifically with this school year being a pandemic year, having to cohort kids, we were not able to offer this programming to our kids. It gave us an opportunity to really look at what we're offering and how we're offering it, and how can we do it better. And so we are proposing that we move our talented and gifted programming to after school, where it's an extracurricular activity, much like a sport or a club, that's tailored specifically to the needs of our identified talented and gifted students. And we believe that we can create a personalized program specific to each grade level. It would be for each grade level approximately 20 different times that they would meet. We would look at creating opportunities for each grade level to participate in competitions. Competitions that would elevate critical thinking skills, competitions that would encourage communication, partnership, those kinds of experiences, attributes that we really look for in all of our students, but we especially want to push the envelope with our most gifted kids. So some examples would be Invention Convention in 5th grade, getting our kids prepared for that. That occurs at the statewide level. The Science Bowl, which encompasses not only science topics, but also math. And we've had students approach our current talented and gifted teacher, Mrs. Rachel Ryan, about participating in something like that. Mock trials at the 8th grade level, where kids literally take on the roles and pursue that type of an environment and go after those pieces. So from our perspective, we think that providing this programming after school would meet the needs of our kids. We think that our kids, we will specifically give kids and families information about this programming so that they're aware of this change. And we think we can do it better, and that's part of why we want to make this change, to meet the needs of our talented and gifted kids.
Any comments? Any questions?
Is there currently an invention convention?
There is currently an invention convention. Not, I don't know this year.
there hasn't been one this year. but
There
we're
hasn't
hoping it comes
been
back.
one this year, but typically, yes.
That was one of my favorite things from elementary school.
You remember that?
I
Do
do
you?
remember that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
TAGS has always been a sore spot for us. Some people feel that we neglect it, but it's never neglected, it's just that this year it's taken a bump, and next year we hope to bring it right back to where the students will benefit.
Can I make one more statement? I apologize. Bailey Gartman is Bailey Gartman is a
Yeah.
music teacher, and I've been working with her. She's done a great job. I'd be remiss if I didn't remember her name in getting music production together. So thank you, Bailey. I apologize for some reason I got a blank.
Okay. All righty, so action items. 1, an act to vote on the surplus, the 2019-2020 school year. Now,
I'll move to return the entire $661,000 and change, is that what it is?
Tom, what's the exact number?
61,286, I believe.
Say that again?
61,000.
Let me get the exact number.
Get the exact number, Bob, hold on. Okay, take your time.
I'm sorry, my computer's not cooperating.
Or not.
Matt, can I get your, I'm just spinning here, can I get your assistance?
Okay, take your time, we got. We'll break that in the last minute.
Let's go
Where's
to,
this
two for right now.
Just came back.
Do I have a
Just gotta
motion
stand
staff
up.
to change the 2020-2021 school calendar, making Thursday, March 4th, 2021, a virtual learning day, allowing for parent-teacher conferences on March 3rd?
So moved.
So moved by Robert, second by Roxy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Kelly, you getting all this?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the number for action item 1 whenever you get it.
Yeah, we'll go back to that, thank you.
Okay. Act to accept teacher's letter of
I do have it
resignation.
whenever you're ready.
Back to the one.
Go back to number one.
The exact number is 661,286.
661.
286.
61286.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I'll make the motion to move the remaining surplus from last year, $661,286, and return it proportionally to the towns based on their percent that they would get back.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
I just believe we took a chunk of it already, of the surplus, and we did the HVA system. I think looking at next year's capital improvement and 2 years, the five-year capital improvement plan, that we're in good shape moving down the road. I do believe that we have informed the towns already, that we are pretty much saying not to continue the process of expecting surplus money back in the future, so that they don't budget for it. And I believe that, in the pandemic, the way it is, and, we talked about stress on kids, let's talk about stress on parents and taxpayers, that returning these funds back to the town will help to eliminate some of the problems that people are having in their individual homes, and is the best interest of the taxpayers as well. So I think it's the prudent thing to do at this time. And I believe we should move forward with returning the taxpayer dollars. Now, this is money from, I know we heard a lot of people talking about surpluses. This is last year's money
19.
that is zeroed out, that we really can't spend this year anyway. So I think we give it back to the taxpayers, and that's the most prudent thing for us to do at this point.
Anyone else have a comment before I comment?
Yeah, I seconded this to open discussion on it, and, so, again, I'm glad you mentioned it, Bob. We have two options with this money. We can take 1% of it and put it into capital non-recurring, and that can only be used for specific things. We cannot take that and allocate it to save positions that are quote-unquote being cut or anything like that. And as Mr. Hiscox said, I think we have an obligation to the taxpayers of the towns, so that, we can offset some of the tax burden that may come down to them in the form of an increased mill rate or anything else, due to, decreased tax receipts because of the pandemic. So, in that particular instance, I agree with Bob. I wish we could take it and reallocate it and use it to offset some of these cuts for the next fiscal year. It's just, that's a state statute that prevents us from doing anything like that. So I
Okay.
just want to be clear.
All right, and in the effort to be clear, to enter into that and say you'd like to put it towards this existing budget is very not fair to the public, especially since we have these 12 people basically that have been, confused on to why we have a surplus and we're not using it in this budget. And then you have just went and added to it. So, Yes, we cannot use it in this budget. We've said it several times tonight. The other object is, we do have some money that we did use in capital non-recurring. We can't take up to the 1%, we all know that. 2 weeks ago, I asked if we could just put another 100,000 into that. As Bob has said, the towns should know by now that we are trying to go with zero back to the towns. We're trying to make much leaner budgets the last 2 years. So we did state that 2 years in a row, but beginning of this year, we did give the towns back some money that we had. We were able to do it, and it was very nicely done. This time, we have a track that needs to be done. Something has just come up with the pool area that needs to be addressed. We don't have a figure on it, it's too new, it just happened. But there are times when we do not have money to go and have something fixed. So now I'm only asking for 100,000, not that whole thing, just 100,000 put back into capital non-reoccurring. 4 things that happen, that if they do happen and we don't have the money, we need to then go to town meeting with the both towns. So I think it's sad that we can't put things in the category that they need to be addressed. Anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about, giving money back to the towns, and this is money that was allocated by the taxpayer for the Region 16 school year. And since I've been on the board has been a responsible steward of the town's financial resources. We've had a 0% increase or even a reduction in the overall budget. And I think that the board has consistently been responsible with the financial resources. And so, Priscilla, I support the thought of returning some of the money and holding on to for when we need it in the future. Because, if people are of the thought that this money returned is going to fix Burton Road and Beacon Falls, that's not the case. That's a much bigger thing. And so I think that a portion of it returned is responsible, and continuing to hold on to some of it as was originally allocated is our job.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Respectfully, if I could, I don't know if maybe I didn't articulate as well as I would have liked to, but I just want to let you know that I was simply trying to reinforce what I said previously, that there seems to be the idea in the public right now that we can somehow take this money and apply it towards these positions that are being proposed to be reduced. We cannot by statute do that. So I was simply trying to make that, again, reinforce that, and I apologize if that didn't come across that way.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So I agree with what you were saying. If we could put a little bit, at least, of the money into the capital recurring, I would feel a little better about that, just so, because we did withdraw a lot out of that account already. And I don't know. And then we did talk about this last year with the towns too, and about not planning to have it back. And I know Michael has mentioned at meetings too that the budget is tight, and that can't be expected anymore. But that would be my thought, just to err on the side of caution and at least put the 100,000 in there and give the rest back to the town.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I think just looking ahead to the current budget that we're in right now, we'll probably finish with a surplus of some sort, unless something dramatic happens between now and June. And that would be the recommendation that surplus out of the current budget go to capital non-improvement this time next year. So we'd be able to replenish that account.
But you also have to remember that we know that the track is gonna be over $1 million, and then we're gonna fix the pool, and then we do not know what else will come up before then. So even if we were to take any of the money up to the 1%, that still would not be enough to take care of all our capital needs. So something will have to be bonded. So I'm just trying to think of taking care of the small needs, and yes, we're gonna have a big bond regardless of what the figure is. Roxy, did you want to say something?
Well,
but what is $100,000, really? What is that gonna do?
You could fix the pool.
If it fix a pool, $100,000?
We don't have a figure, it's such a new, something that
We-
just happened.
We have, we have a couple estimates between 50, well, we have one at 80. We think we're gonna be between, about $50,000, I'm thinking, to fix the drains and some things on the pool. It's really just maintenance issues that haven't been addressed and an issue with the drains. So it's probably would be around $50,000 to fix it.
But do the taxpayers know that that is something that we want to, or have to
Well,
do?
that just
or
came-
they
that
didn't
ju-
vote
that-
on
that-
That wasn't in our budget,
Brand new
really.
this
It wasn't budgeted, it just came in.
Just brand new.
But for full disclosure, we do have 130 in capital non-recurring
Yeah.
and some money in maintenance, so.
Yep, we just have
That, just for full disclosure, we do have 50 to 80 grand for the pool, but we do have money in capital non-recurring that right now I can do it in maintenance money. So just for full disclosure, I think it's important.
Yeah.
We're in good shape.
I keep hearing the track. Is that what we're essentially looking to target? Some of, you mentioned 100,000, but for that matter, it could be any amount. But is that the heavy hitting item that we're thinking about looking down the road?
Yes.
And if
Big one
so,
Absolutely.
22, 23.
well,
right?
sure, but I mean, in my mind, what I'm thinking of, Tom, how, if you do a bond anticipation note or you finance it that way,
Well, I think that's what we talked about doing.
what's the typical, is it 10 years, is it 15, what are the typical time spans
Oh,
on something like that?
Just like a mortgage, you can go very.
You can go however you wanna do.
25.
And
And the typical rates are, what, 1.9 right now,
Right around
somewhere in that
2,
area?
Right around 2.
So, I mean, in terms of $1 million project, $100,000 financed out over 10, 15 years, you're not really talking all that much money. But to turn around and tell the town now, you know, that's $100,000 in this particular operating budget that you don't have to cover expenses or lost income from tax receipts. I think that's a much heavier hit than, you know, the few extra dollars that we pay on financing, you know, the $100,000. So that's the only thing, I mean, unless there's something looming, like I just heard about the, I didn't know about that.
That's brand new.
You know, but unless there's something looming that $100,000 could take care of and set aside, then, you know, I think the much heavier hit would be on the towns and on the taxpayers, of losing that $100,000 going back to the town, but it's just my 2 cents.
I don't know if Ben had something to say. It's not-
Ben,
is that
I'm sorry, did you have something to say, Ben? I didn't want to cut you off.
Me, no, I'm good.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, it's gonna come to a vote. All those in favor of sending all the money, the $661,286
$61,286.
to the towns?
Aye.
Aye,
Hold on, Kelly, can you take a vote?
yeah, to go for.
Take a
Yeah,
roll call.
if when they say aye, if they could just say their name.
Okay, thank you.
Hiscox, aye.
Dyer, aye.
Valencourt, aye.
Okay, nays?
Ben, aye.
Ben, aye. Yes, Ben, Ben. Sorry. Nays.
Okay, nays? Fratello?
Christine,
Eric, aye. Nay.
All right, so we have Christine, Eric, and Priscilla. Nay, we have Roxy, Bob, Robert, and Ben. Yes, that the money goes back to the town, so the money to the town passes.
Okay,
You can tally it up too for the minutes, please, Kelly. I think it's 4.6.
I have 3.9 for the prospect votes and 0.7 for Beacon Falls, because we don't have Navi today.
Correct, so that's 4.6 total.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Thank
okay, action item 3. Move to accept teacher's letter of resignation
you. As of June 30, 2021.
as of June 30th, 2021.
You have to say her name, please. Heather.
Heather Constantine? Contanescu.
Heather
Sorry,
Contanescu. It's
I
very difficult.
killed it,
name.
sorry.
So moved with appreciation.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Act to non-renew employment contracts for the 2021-2022 for certified staff due to reduction in force. Now, these are not definites, these are could-bes, but all the names have to be listed. Laura Dorenzo, Jessica Jennings, Christy Kylane, Amy Lemay, what?
After she reads that.
Shannon Reed, Lauren Reed, Marcia Saka, Allison Sardo, James Spade, Maura Nguyen, Michelle Myers. Motion to be made by,
The reason for,
Part of the budget, state
We have to
law.
do this
if
every
you-
year.
If you're doing a non-renewal due to reduction in force for the budget for next year, you have to do it in this year's budget.
Prior to April, right?
Prior to April, so
we have to, so these are all non-tenured people? or-
no, some are tenured, some are not tenured. These are not all these people will be reduced, but you take 2 or 3 from the least hired for reduction in force, so that if the budget passes, we've notified per state law non-tenured for reduction in force.
Well, non-tenured, the other ones are,
Not, I'm sorry, non-renewal for reduction in force, it's not about tenure or non-tenure. The next item is a non-renewal that will go into executive
right,
session.
I understand, I thought this was a typical motion of the non-tenured people just
No,
being
this-
notified.
This is not non-tenured. This is act to non-renew employment contracts for reduction in force when you get into budget season.
Does this include the proposed,
Correct.
okay, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, but not all these people are gonna be non-renewed, it's part of the process.
You have to notify them by.
Yeah, they've already received a letter for us that at the board meeting tonight, we're gonna be taking action on
That was
it.
gonna be my next question.
Mhm.
Of course.
Is it notified?
You know, law, this president of the union for 15
No,
years.
it was not, it never included the non-tenured, tenured people.
It's because of the risk.
Right.
because
Because
we
of the rent
have to,
clause,
because it's
that was a different process, and they're entitled to a different process that they can file. The non-tenured versus the tenured staff have different.
Bob, this isn't about non-tenure, I think
I know,
we're
well,
polluting the action item. There's an action item on the table as part of the
Well, so
process.
long as the board knows that the tenured people have different actions that they can take as a result of this motion, as part of the appeal.
No, it was the risk.
Well, they can appeal, they have a right to appeal. I just was curious why they were all mixed together, I don't recall anything like that.
Do we understand?
Yep.
Okay. Motion? No one's gonna make the motion? Really?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, board, what don't you understand? If you do not understand something, let us make it point clear. I don't want any member of this board to vote on something they don't understand. The superintendent is here, he will answer the questions. So if you do not understand what we're voting on, ask the question now.
Great point.
Just walk us all through the process again.
All right, here's the process.
Yeah, just, can you explain that one more time? just
Okay,
so
here's
it's
the,
clear?
here's the process. In order to adhere to the contract and state of Connecticut 10-year laws, as we approach budget season, if we're thinking of reducing staff because of a reduction in force, you have to send a letter to the staff, which everybody's name that was read tonight received it, and then the board has to vote on it. That means they've been notified that their contract is not renewed. However, that does not mean that they're going to be cut. That'll happen when we finalize our budget on April 7th at the public hearing is when that is done. Well, actually, it's finalized, yeah, March 24th. It goes to 24th, it's 7th. Has nothing to do with non-tenured. It's about reduction of work contractually. That's what you're voting on.
Okay, so basically we're voting that, we are aware that the letters were sent out, that this is something that could happen.
Yes, and that you now have the ability,
Until we finalize the budget.
you have the ability to eliminate positions that were presented for the first hour of this meeting. And Robert excellently asked for where they were, what the class sizes were, so we've been through that for an hour, and this is part of that process. And I appreciate what you said, Priscilla, it's very important. And I know there's some new members this year, and this may be new to some people, so that's where we are. There's a motion on the table, and there's a second.
Are there any questions? Please ask them now. Okay, so we're going to take the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
So you're opposed to these? Kelly, take a vote. Call it, Kelly, do me a favor, call everyone's name, have them say yay or nay, and then we'll document it at this point. I think that's the way to go about it, okay?
Excellent. Christine Arnold? Aye. Ben Canzero?
Aye.
Priscilla Cretella?
Aye.
Eric Dye?
Aye.
Robert Dyer?
No.
Robert Hiscock?
I'm gonna go aye, because it's for notification purposes also.
Roxanne Valencourt?
Yes.
Okay,
So the motion passes.
Yes.
yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's, I think it's 8.0 to 0.7. I'm sorry, no, my number was wrong. I think it's 7.4 to 1.3. But we'll tally it later, thank you.
Yep.
We're gonna hold on the next one.
Okay,
We'll go to
5, we're gonna
executive
go
session.
into executive session, we're gonna hold that to the end. Okay, Tony, Director of Finance Report?
Thank you. A few of my items have been discussed already, but I am happy to report that Greenleaf has completed their work at both schools, Woodland and Long River. Both jobs are complete. There has been some communication back and forth with our towns regarding the capital non-recurring fund. That correspondence was placed in your board packet, and the follow-up was in everyone's email today. There was some follow-up correspondence. ECS funding for the next 2 fiscal years will remain flat, same as it is in fiscal year 2021. And finally, Dix Works LLC has filed our secondary disclosures, and those are all set at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Tony?
Thank you for all your work, Tony.
Alrighty. In our packet, you do have the calendar of workshops, the public hearing, and the annual district meeting. Okay, old business, high school yearbook.
Just that we're working 2 organizations at this point. We did order the yearbooks from another group, which I stated lastly. They were supposed to be here by today. There was a little problem with the cover, so hopefully they're gonna be in by next week. In the meantime, we still have the $10,000 issue with Life Touch, and we're not getting a response that it's in production yet. So if by April 1 we don't have it, we're probably gonna turn it over to our attorneys at that point. Tony, anything else with that? We've already done the PO, we put it on.
Oh, it's been paid. It's
We put it on a credit card with the new organization, so parents should be getting their yearbook shortly. Kids.
Okay. Is there any other old business?
I don't think so. There's nothing, right, Michelle?
No.
Good. I don't know if any administrators have something to roll on today still, I don't know if we mind, I know.
No.
Any administrators have anything that we left out that you want to comment on, or that you want to add? I know you're joining us today. Okay. I think we're
Hearing none,
good.
okay.
So do we want to make
Is
a motion?
there any new business? Hearing no new business? Okay. Anybody want items for the new agenda, please contact Michael. Information items will go to committees. Is there any committee report that a person has to give us, please? Talk.
Personnel and negotiations and effort. well over 2 hours yesterday with the UPSU, and it was a very productive first meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Curriculum has meeting on 24th at 6 o'clock in the district office. Parent Advisory Council has a virtual meeting on the 24th, also at 5:15. Is there anything else to come before this board before we go into executive session?
Just under wellness, and I'll get the information, the town of Prospect has created a wellness committee of some sort. I have not participated yet. I've had two people, Sarah has participated, I'm not sure if Shelley has, and no, Patricia Irazzi has for us, only because it keeps hitting meetings like it was last night, and I was at UPSU negotiations the time before it was Board of Ed meeting, so I will bring information, but we are participating in that with Prospect. We also are participating with the Historic Society for Beacon Falls with an art contest. So our schools are kind of involved in some of the activities that are going on in town. And I'll bring you information on that next meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing none. I have a motion to go into executive
Move to go
session.
into executive session, to include superintendent of schools,
Second.
For the purpose of,
for the purpose of discussing a non-renewal contract.
okay,
Second.
second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All righty, we're going to go into executive session.
Matt, how should we do this?
Well, what I'll do is I'll mute the live stream to YouTube, no camera, no audio.
Okay.
When you're done, Rob, if you're comfortable, you just unmute it and we say we're done. Otherwise, if you wanted to end the
Matt, can
stream
we,
now.
is it too late just to keep Matt in? I don't think it's going to take long.
I'll go down to my office and.
Okay, we'll
put
just
that
call you
on.
back. Thank
All right.
you. It will not take long. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you're back up.
Okay. So, we need a motion to, act for the non-renewal of the contract.
We're back in regular session.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to non-renew the employment contract for 2021-2022 for Amy Burns.
Second,
Second?
discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Board members?
Opposed? Ben, Christine, Eric? Aye. Aye. Okay. All right. So, motion passes. All right, adjournment,
Move to adjourn.
Bob
Second.
and Robert.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Matt,
you
leave them
very
on for a
much.
minute though,
Yep.
okay? We'll
9:02.
Robert, you know how to shut that down later, right?
No, I'll end the stream. For ending the Google Meet, just hit the hanger, you know that. All right.
Hey, guys, just to let you know, me and